Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. And for a very rare time, being on a Monday seems like a good idea.
Mm.
There's only one place to start. Unfortunately, it's the first game as well. Leicester Riders 85, Caledonia Gladiators 74. But let's wind back a little bit before that, Dave, and start with everything off court. Firstly, Caledonia released Jared Wilson Frame and Malik Dunbar for a serious breach of club discipline. Then it came to light that Dunbar was the suspect in a murder case in the US and linked to other things as well. Clearly, the recruitment didn't pick any of this up, so the club is investigating that. Dave, you've done a lot of recruiting, and indeed, you know a thing or two about people on the wrong side of the law, Dave. So that seems like in your wheelhouse. And because we plan nothing and we just press record as soon as we get onto this link, I don't even know if you've seen the announcement
I
from
have.
about an hour ago. But they've just announced Caledonia that James Hamilton and Robbie Pears have left the club, and Johnny Bunyan is going to take over as head coach for the
That's,
remainder of the
that's
season.
that's friend of the show, Johnny Bunyan.
Friend of the show, Johnny Bunyan. Little John, not Big John, not to be
I know,
confused.
but even so, it's still a desperate attempt to curry favor, isn't it?
It is indeed. Where do we start with this, Dave? Where? I mean,
It's it's base comedy. I think is probably the best way I would describe it. Um, let's go back to the very beginning. Robbie Pears and James Harton came in clearly with a mandate and almost a one is the way it worked, a list of players they were going to bring in with them.
hmm
That's the way it seemed. Literally, they didn't get the job and then scour the continent for weeks. They got the job and those three guys were there.
mm.
Yeah. Um, so effectively, one assumes there's been some form of meeting between them and the gladiators hierarchy, and when they've said, "This is what this, yeah, give us the job." And by the way, these are the guys we're going to get. Aren't they great?
Mm.
Um, And so whether it's the gladiators who failed to do their due diligence, or whether it's Robbie Pears who's failed to do his due diligence, either way, it doesn't reflect well on either of them.
The other thing is, I saw a story. I saw that obviously, bad news goes everywhere.
Mm.
This did. I mean, it made it to the front page of the record, didn't it? It was on the BBC website as
Mm.
well, and there was a quote from the agency saying that they didn't know what I assume to be
Yeah, well, if
Dunbar's
it's
age.
quote from the agent saying he didn't know, then that means he most probably did.
Mm.
Agents aren't known for their necessarily known for their level of alacrity with the
Mm.
club. So I mean that's nothing. You take no
Yeah,
notice what he.
yeah, yeah,
I'm sorry, you got to do your own diligence.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Hard, and it's pretty not hard in the age of Google. It was a little bit harder in the years gone by,
Mm.
when you don't have the internet resources you do now. But there's always a question it's the same question you ask whenever anybody with a degree of with a high level of talent comes into the league. It's why? Why are they here?
hmm Yeah.
It might be because you're paying a lot more money than anybody else. That's fine.
hmm
Okay, you're paying them now what they're doing, what they would get in other countries. That's fine. But also, it's like they're available now, and why are they here?
mm
Okay. And if you don't, particularly it's one thing doing it, one thing recruiting pre-season when you've got a whole list of players, you've got, the players that played in other countries, there's a reason for them being available because everybody signs 1 year contracts. It's different mid-season. First question is always why haven't you got a job? Second question, why are you coming here?
mm.
Okay. Um, so that was just another fit. That was just an inept failure. It's just goes beyond that. Now, in relation to, I mean, obviously with Dunbar, the only man I've ever interviewed live on TV.
Did you slip him a business card, Dave?
I didn't, but I did ask him if we'd just seen the real Malik Dunbar, didn't I? Oh my goodness. And let's be clear, he's innocent until proven guilty. So,
Exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah,
at the end of the day, this isn't a funny thing because somebody's died in a,
yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah,
in a
yeah,
car
yeah.
park, wherever. So I want to make light of it. But from professional basketball, it's professional basketball 101.
Mm,
You do it. Now, I've had a couple of questions. Well, how can we get to visa if he's
mm,
got, previous arrests and involvement, I think, for possession of marijuana with intent to supply, possession of a firearm, that was
mm,
suggested as well. And the answer is he doesn't have a visa. And this is the thing that people don't necessarily understand. Um, the the process for getting basketball players into this country historically used to be extremely lengthy. Used to be you get a visa for a player in America, you would have to um, fill in the forms with them. I did it many a time. You go online, you have them sign it, then they have to wait a week to go to a biometric station in America,
Yeah,
get the
yeah.
fingerprints done. You have to put all the paperwork into a
You have
packet.
to hope he lives in a city that has one rather than having to
Yeah,
fly into one.
so exactly, and then you have to put all the paperwork in the packet and trust that the players know what the opposite, know which side of the packet to sign in.
Mm,
You've got to scribble all over it, high priority. You pay an extra 500 quid for that. It goes off to New York. You might get it back in 10 days. So it's like 3 or 4 weeks to get a visa.
mm,
Okay. So what there is also, however, is a process in this country which is called, perhaps ironically, PPE, which is permitted paid engagement. And obviously, that type of process I've just described would be ludicrous for somebody who's coming in, for instance, to fly and to do a concert and leave again.
yeah. Taylor
Yeah.
Swift doesn't
Taylor
need
Swift,
a lot
exactly.
of paperwork to come and do 6 nights at
Exactly.
Wembley or whatever.
Exactly. So what they have is this thing called permitted paid engagement, which basically allows a player to come in for a month, um, and includes playing for professional clubs. And within that month, a professional sporting exercise, that is a permitted paid engagement.
Mm,
Within that month, the club can then apply from within the country for a visa, right? My guess is that what happened with Caledonia is that this got flagged up when they applied for the visa.
mm.
That's nothing more than a guess, but it makes sense with the timelines. Okay. So the answer is it really doesn't take much to fly a basketball player in this country. If the Americans are willing to let them leave the country, and clearly it's not a
See, to me,
federal
that
crime.
was more the interesting question
Uh,
is how do you get out of the country rather than how do you get into this
if it's
country?
not, I think people overestimate the American law enforcement system at
Mm.
times, and I think if it's not a federal offence, then I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
they're
yeah.
really assessing every airport. But in any event, flying in, you get a letter, you basically put a letter, you send them a letter to print out to hand to customs saying this gentleman's coming in on permitted paid engagement for a month. These are the details of the club, etc. You walk in.
Mm, mm.
That's it. And that's really helpful because to be frank, it means that clubs can get players in it like 2 or 3 days instead of waiting for 3 or 4 weeks,
Yeah,
which
yeah, and we saw that not that long back where it would literally somebody would get injured and it'd take you 3 weeks to replace it.
yeah, it's just point. It really doesn't work. So there's no kind of fault in relation to the immigration situation. Everybody wants to look it up. It's all there on the gov.uk website. So yeah, so there's that. Um, that, however, obviously has caused Caledonia to lose faith in their coach,
Mm,
given what we've heard today.
yeah.
Um, a substantial loss of faith in the coach because basically they said off you go again. Um, And I think Caledonia can do this because obviously we know the owner's a self-made millionaire,
Mm,
and the reality is he's probably learning that the best way of making a small fortune in British basketball is starting off with a large one,
mm,
because he'll have to pay these guys off,
mm.
and
Well, he probably won't. Oh, the
the
coaches, you mean?
coaches,
Yeah,
certainly,
yeah,
maybe not
yeah,
the
yeah,
players, but
yeah,
certainly
yeah.
the coaches. Obviously not that. Now, we then have, obviously, they were dismissed initially. I mean, this wasn't the reason that Wilson Frame was dismissed.
No,
He was
no.
dismissed for, I think,
Breach of
conduct
club
experimental.
discipline. Yeah,
Well, that
yeah.
generally mean, I mean, again, I'm guessing that
Mm,
generally means smoking,
mm,
and it's not smoking cigarettes.
mm,
And when you look at what Dunbar's alleged to have done, then two and two may make five in this occasion, but
mm,
it's probably more likely to make four. Generally, whenever it's conducted in breach of serious team rules, that's what it is because it's either
mm.
that or you do what the Plymouth guys do and you get involved in a fight in the town.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was last year. I don't
It's,
even know if anything happened in
it's
that these days.
usually something on the wrong side of the law. There could be drink
Yeah,
driving
exactly. Yeah, and,
or
and with
something like
players,
that.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
generally quite simple. Quite simple. It's either they're either smoking or they're whacking people. Um, so yeah, so he goes as well, leaving poor Elijah Kane injured
Mm,
in East Kilbride with nobody came in with, and then they have to go to Leicester and play a game.
mm, mm.
Um, and I mean, on a serious level, it's probably good for Caledonia that that the owner is getting all his mistakes out of the way now.
That's the positive.
That's the
That's the
positive. That
positive
they're not
spin.
being, they're not being,
Yeah.
they're not dragging it out. They're
Over
not
two
dying
years. Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
death by a thousand
Take
cuts.
all your lumps in one go.
It's off with their heads, isn't it?
Mm, mm,
No death by a thousand cuts at all. And so that's the positive side. Now, the PR has been appalling ever since they got rid of Gareth.
mm,
There's been none. I mean, I don't think Robbie Peters has done an interview that I can remember. I haven't seen one. You know, obviously the TV, the bland TV stuff you do before a game, and I did with him after the game
mm,
at Newcastle,
mm,
but that's not a real interview. The owner's not spoken, the GM's not spoken about what they saw in Robbie, why they decided to go that way, why they decided to jettison the Spanish guys, why they decided to jettison the Scottish guys, only to bring in the Scouse guy to then jettison him to bring in the Scottish guy again.
mm.
None of that's been explained at all. The
It would appear it's going to be this week because
Well, it might do, but
Grant has said he's doing an interview. I saw. I think that it was either yesterday or today that I saw that. And then obviously they've opened. I can't remember what the wording in the press release was, but they were,
realignment.
yeah, but they were opening it out to the fans to talk to
Yeah.
senior
I mean, they're
management.
talking about realignment, but I think they're doing a lot of de-aligning
Mm,
as opposed to realigning. Um, no, the point being is that that might be worthwhile now,
mm,
but if you're going to change horses in midstream like they did, then you've got to tell people why you're doing it in
mm,
January, in December.
mm,
At the end of the day, you're getting a press. Gareth gets the same press release as Robbie Pears,
mm,
right? Gareth's been there for 15 years. Robbie
mm,
Pears been there for 6 weeks. It's not right the way that it's been done, the way it's been handled. It is a massive learning curve for them. I hope they get better. I don't see. There's no Schadenfreude here at all.
no,
It's just a mess. Um, and to be frank, Johnny is as somebody absolutely steeped in Scottish basketball, Johnny is probably the best option they've got. But I don't think they had many,
no.
if any. You
Well, they were
know,
probably all called Bunyan, weren't they?
yeah, probably. Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, oh dear, we're getting into kind of Trump world there, aren't we? With Barron and Eric and all these people. There could be a hegemony in
Mm,
East Kilbride. But no, I mean, it may be they've gone ultimately with the least bad option. Obviously, Johnny's a friend of the show, and
mm,
I'm really desperate for him to do well.
yeah.
Uh, but how they've got to that point is just um, beyond contemplation, really. Um, So nothing's working there. Nothing has worked there. They've been I think the kindest way of describing it is the organization's been very naive.
Mm,
And with new people comes naivety, so that
mm,
happens. But
yeah.
there is always a danger, when you're I'm not gonna, this may sound a little bit harsh, when you're the most successful businessman in the room,
Mm,
to think that you can do things better than people who've been doing the job for 20 years, and you can
mm,
change things, and you can formulate a new way, and you're being more efficient, and you can musk it.
mm,
And in reality, we've talked before, British basketball is a very complex ecosystem, and the people who have
mm.
been doing it for decades do it a certain way because that's the way it works.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you want to put everybody on 3-year contracts, that's fine, but you're going to be paying out the end of them. You
Mm,
know, if you want to be bringing in foreign directors of coaching to go above your head coach, again, fine, but you got to make sure they can work together first.
mm, mm,
Everything that they've done seems to be designed more in the abstract concept than in the realities of professional basketball. And even now, I know in the press release they're talking about realignment for the future, plan for the future. Look, the plan is to win,
mm,
right? Winning covers everything. Losing exposes everything.
mm,
Win games, find a way, and that's why, it's a benevolent dictatorship. Find the person who's going to be your coach, who's going to recruit your team, who's going to win your games. That's it. And all
yeah.
this stuff about, vision. And you might get a Fraser Malcolm come through once in a while. You might get a Johnny Bunyan come through once every 5 years. I mean, look at this. Is Kyle Jimenez coming back? You'd expect that he probably would. I mean, they've been playing with 6 players, and they've sent off a guy who's shooting 45% to play to get some experience in the Division One in England.
Mm, mm,
I mean, that smacks of personality clashes as opposed to any type of rudimentary basketball decision.
yeah, yeah.
Why would you lose him? I mean, it's not that if you've got 12, he's not going to play. You get it. You've been playing with 6 players for 3 weeks.
Mm,
The whole thing just went horrendously wrong. And as I say, there's no Schadenfreude there, but that's what we're here for.
yeah.
Well, as
Uh,
it,
the 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 uh, the positive, the positive spin for Caledonia fans out of all of this is nothing happens for the first time, does it? The
no,
last time that Robbie Pearce had a very short-lived job, uh, as one of the as the third or fourth coach of the third coach of the season, fourth coach of the season,
with Josh.
was in 2017. He was replaced by a slightly left field choice who was there to make it to the end of the season in Ben Thomas, and he's done pretty well since then, hasn't
It's
he? So
still
you
there.
never know.
Yeah,
It might well be the right choice. You never know. Should we do a little bit
well,
of basketball?
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Bowman obviously confirmed out for the remainder of the season with that knee injury that he picked up. Onwas was back. Actually, when I looked at this Caledonia team before the game, I went, "That's not a bad seven
No.
that they've got there." When you look at that, if you put a couple of extra players into that, it could be a pretty decent team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean Teddy Okafor and Patrick Whelan was starting for GB,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
2 years ago. And Elon Barnes has played impressively and at times, and Onwas is a solid BBL player, SBL player. And they got the two young guys, Hughes and Flagler.
The other thing, actually, before we go into this, because we didn't pick it up, and again, I don't know if you've heard this, but I got asked it on Twitter just before we came on air. Was somebody said, have Caledonia used up all of their overseas allotted spaces? And I understand the rules have been changed over the weekend, so no, they haven't. Is the answer to that, and they're going
I'm
to
going
be
to
able
get
to
onto that
replace.
as well. And now you've raised it, I'm going to get onto that
Yeah.
because I heard that rumor as well. And it's not been officially announced. And generally on this stuff, on this show, we don't talk about stuff unless it's official. But it's been mentioned and whispered in by me by too many people of too many different,
Well, enough
um,
people from clubs have said it
yeah,
to
to
me.
clubs
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
indeed, officials and whatever.
Mm.
Okay. And I'm just going to say it out loud. It makes an absolute mockery of the whole competition. You cannot, in any logical sporting competition, have a situation where rules are changed halfway through a season unless it is by the express agreement of every team. And
Well,
my
it
understanding
will
is that it wasn't.
it can only pass by being put to a vote,
Yeah, and
and
the vote was a
therefore
majority vote.
majority vote. Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, that's 9 teams. That's 5v4, right? So what you're
Well,
saying is we
we don't know it's 5v4.
no, we don't know, but it's at
Could have
least
been
five,
eight
it's
one. It could be
minimum.
9-0. It
Yeah.
could be 7-2. It
But
could be
what
6-0.
I know from what I've been again, from what I've been told, I don't like being a reporter, but from the information I've got, it wasn't 9-0, right?
Yeah.
So you're in a situation whereby in a sporting competition, which runs from September to May, just more than half of the clubs can come together and say, "Oh, we want to change the rules halfway through the season."
Mm,
An embarrassment. It's
mm.
pathetic. Um, the
So
government.
if I just play devil's advocate here,
Please do.
my assumption of it is it was previously uh, five overseas players, and you could change to nine. So when it moved to six overseas players, surely the nine should move as well.
Well, I should have moved in September in June.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine they had a lot of things to work through in
I don't
June.
care. There should be a route. I don't care. Any sporting organization which allows itself to be governed by short-term thinking to the point whereby it's willing to change rules halfway through the competition on a majority vote, basically destroys the credibility of its own product. And here's the thing, right? What happens if the bottom five teams turn around and put a vote out there saying, we think that from now on, every team should get 4 points for winning a game instead of two, just for the second half of the season. Give us a better chance to catch up. What stops that happening?
Well, yeah, I suppose if all of the bottom
Nothing.
five wanted to vote for it, yeah,
Absolutely. So the,
yeah,
the credibility of the whole thing, you
yeah,
can change
yeah.
whatever, you can do whatever you want. It's just basically the Wild West. And it happened last year and it happened the year before. And I've banged on year on year on year about the governance in the league, which is nonsensical. The first rule you should have in any league is that these rules apply for the entirety of a season.
Hmm.
That's it. You can't change around when you want. Now, if
So I had this debate yesterday with somebody, or was it the day before? It might have been, and they were making the very argument you were making there. And I suppose again, it's one of those things is does stuff not get tweaked anyway? So the example that I gave him because we'd just come it was Saturday because we'd just watched a football game is there were two Arsenal players sent off for kicking the ball away earlier this season. And that is now never yellow carded. I haven't seen it in anything since then. And it was
You think,
almost like
what do you think? Do you think people had a vote to prevent that being a yellow card?
well, I don't
Not a
think they had a vote.
self-interested vote.
I think PGM PM whatever the acronym is decided actually maybe we've gone a bit over the top here and we're going to ease it back.
That's a question of interpretation of the rules, not
Yeah,
changing.
yeah. Well, yeah, I get that. I get that. But it was the best argument I could come up with
It's a
in
better,
in
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan, but I'm counting this one as a victory. No, I find here's the thing, right? We are currently going through a process, or we're aware that there's a license process ongoing with
yeah,
this.
yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, GB Basketball have put it out to put a tender out or something else
Yeah,
last
yeah.
week. We heard nothing about it since October.
Mm.
Okay. We've now got an organization, we've got multiple teams in our league which already have 7 imports
Yeah,
with
yeah,
various
yeah,
other
yeah,
rules,
yeah.
right? You can get, there are various different things that kind of add-ons to the Americans that we've got.
Mm.
We are in a situation where we are not, in my view, supporting the development of British players to the degree that we
So,
should.
so, so again, for devil's advocate sake, and to be honest with you, I agree with you on. I think six is too many, although I accept that's probably why it's more competitive this year. I think seven is too many,
Yeah,
but I accept that you need the same rules to apply to everybody,
yeah.
irrespective of their passport. So I sort of get that. Um, and in 1995, when they went from two to five, I was very supportive of it, and I actually, with hindsight, think they were ahead of the curve. The league
I
back in
agree. I think they were. I think five. Look, I have no issue with 5 players who are not eligible to play for Great Britain.
yeah. So
That's
so the point I was going to make is. A, is it the role of the league to be supportive or whatever the words you used of the Great Britain national team? And B, if my football team put out 11 foreign players on Saturday, and bear in mind, we only have two or three English players in our team
yeah,
anyway, so it wouldn't be a stretch, and actually won a game for the first time in about 3 months, slight exaggeration, would I care? And the answer to that is no, I wouldn't.
yeah. I get that. And the response to that is one. Is it the responsibility of the league to assist the GB national team? No. Is it the responsibility of the league to directly hinder the GB national team? Not sensible.
Mm.
Because what we're talking about here is politically and pragmatically the way forward. Now,
And also,
we,
and vice
we,
versa, by the way, it's also not
yeah,
the job of BBF to hinder
yeah.
SLB.
But here's the thing, BBF has a control of the license, so
Yeah,
BBF
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah,
maintain the
yeah,
license requirements. Now, if I'm SLB, what I'm trying to do at this point in time, more than anything else, is demonstrate to BBF how supportive and how helpful I am for the British game.
yeah. Mm,
Right? I am, there's a process going on whereby we don't know who's going to be running a league in the next 3 years.
mm.
I think we've got 3 years at the moment. I don't know. Right? So I'm going to be saying, well, actually, I need to lay out our cards to say, look, we on this show have complained miserably multiple times to the death of the boredom for everybody listening to this about the lack of synergy between Basketball England, Basketball Scotland,
Mm,
the GB basketball, and the professional league.
mm,
We've complained. Now we can't therefore turn around. If I'm a GB basketball and I say, well, how come you've got an Australian with an Irish passport playing instead of a Brit? Or a Portuguese with an American passport playing instead of a Brit, or an American who's just got married playing instead of a Brit. How can I justify that?
mm.
I can't. It's just how they would say, well, it's
Well, I suppose the counter argument back to that, and I'm not really disagreeing with you, Dave, but
yeah,
the
yeah, I get
counter
that.
argument back is because if we say the same thing, it's boring.
Yeah,
The counter argument back is actually all of those players are in our price bracket,
yeah,
and the players of comparable ability who are British are not.
I get that, and that's ultimately where we're at. That's absolutely spot on. We're in this kind of self-interest of the clubs, and no doubt that self-interest is kicking in relation to the decision that's been made
mm,
in relation to extra licenses.
mm.
And that's the extra thing, now, okay, Caledonia have made multiple mistakes, and Caledonia is the
Yeah,
example at this
yeah, yeah,
point. And I'm
yeah,
not,
yeah.
I know there are other clubs who are close
But
to using
if
licenses.
we park Caledonia for a second, I think have Sheffield used a pool there. I
Yeah,
feel
but
like
here's the thing with Sheffield. I have
But
a,
the point I was going to make about Sheffield is Mitchell chose to go back to
yeah, yeah.
America. That's out of their control. Um, Matthews has been out injured. We don't know if he's coming back, but he's been out injured for ages. Chapman is out for the year. He got injured. I think they cut somebody at the beginning of the season. I can't remember.
No, I don't think so.
But
But
my point is that's not their fault.
yeah,
Caledonia, it's their fault because they came in and they got rid of a load of, or they hired a new coach who got rid of everybody and used up all of their things. So that's
um, yeah, and there's obviously a legitimate argument. I don't think anybody argue about an injury replacement situation for people
mm,
who are out for a season or out for a period of time. I don't think anybody could argue reasonably about that. If it's one for one and it's an injury,
mm,
no one wants to see teams disadvantaged. I don't want to see Sheffield penalised by not being able to sign a replacement for Chapman. It
mm,
wouldn't be
mm.
fair.
No,
I, I don't have a problem with
they
that.
obviously
But I do
already
have a
have.
problem
So,
with,
but I think now they're at the limit. But I might be wrong on that. But Cheshire
yeah,
are at the
but
limit, and
well, they had Bennett
they've
Cook,
had
didn't they? I'm
issues.
not sure if they registered Bennett Cook or not. That would
I
be the
don't know, but he
anyway.
isn't he British anyway? Wasn't
No,
he
not
getting a
yet.
passport?
No, well, mate, well, I mean, not yet.
Can't remember.
But in any event, that isn't my greatest. I hear what you're saying, and I
Mm,
think the rules, and I've talked about the rules before, and the transparency of the rules are awful. It's appalling. And we benefit from not having much scrutiny in our league because so many rubbish things are allowed just to creep through and go
mm,
uncommented. This is one of them. The rule there isn't the fact that you can that this has been done. It's the fact that it can be done, as I say, on as little as a 5-4 vote
mm,
in the middle of a season.
mm.
I just find that incomprehensible, absolutely incomprehensible. As I say, there are all
So
sorts
there was some vote in the Premier League. Now, obviously, theirs is it 12-8 it needs to be or something, or is it 13-7 or
14-6,
something? 14-6, is it?
14-6.
So are you, if it was, I don't know, 7-2 or
No,
6-3,
no, I
it's
don't.
just about the changing of the rules.
If you want to change the rule in mid-season, it should be unanimous. I don't see how anybody can get around that. You can't. It's not moving the goalposts; it's changing the pitch.
Mm,
You've gone from a grass field to an ice. Now there might be a club who decided that they didn't want to be a bit more careful, a bit more prudent in relation to who they were going to recruit.
mm,
It's penalising people for doing things properly,
mm,
and more importantly, it's allowing political influence to have an impact on the competitive process. So if you have 4 clubs who team together, or 5 clubs who team together, that
mm.
allows the whole thing to be submitted over the course of the season.
Yeah, yeah,
Then
yeah,
that's just wrong.
yeah.
From a sporting integrity perspective, it is absolutely appalling. From a political perspective, it is short-sighted, and I just can't get away with it. I'm sorry.
Mm,
It's not been officially announced. I wasn't going to talk about it till it was, but you
mm.
mentioned it. I've heard about it.
Well, I don't think it's. I don't think things like that get officially announced. It's
It
just
will be
somebody will
it'll be
sign
announced
it,
the minute Caledonia signs
sign
somebody.
a
It'll be
player.
it's
Yeah, yeah,
announced to us, isn't it? So we
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
and I think it jeopardizes the whole
yeah,
credit of the competition. I feel that I'm just really really down on the whole thing. I'm afraid really down on it. And as I say, what's next? What are we going to do? We're going to move the signing deadline back. Going to change that as well. If somebody gets an injury shortly after the signing deadline,
yeah, yeah.
people think should should we do that? Should we? Well, I mean, the only
But
rule that if nine of them agreed
the
to
signing
agree
deadline
to it,
again is slightly arbitrary in that it has moved over time.
yeah,
Obviously, the movements have always been prior to the season and whatever, and
absolutely.
it's never actually officially published. And it's always one of them where we go: is it the end of February? So is it the beginning of the
Yeah,
March, or is it what? We never quite know when it is anyway.
yeah,
And again, the 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 sort of where it fits is a legacy thing in that it's been for as long as I can remember the end of February or beginning of March.
yeah.
But that was because the playoff final used to be on the 4th of April.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I get that. And no one ever thought to change it
yeah,
because
yeah.
basically we have a bunch of knee-jerk people doing the administration, and they're the club owners, so they're just trying to
Mm,
survive. So
yeah,
everyone's to get the vote. So basically, you have a situation whereby the whole thing is being run by the very club owners that I was defending to the hilt in September
mm,
for getting us a season
yeah,
started.
yeah, yeah.
But in relation to, but in fact, have um it's everybody can work. Here's the thing, Dan. Everyone can work together in July,
Yeah.
right? But when you're at the thick end in January and you
Yeah,
lose,
yeah, yeah,
then you're worrying
yeah,
about
yeah.
things, then suddenly A rings up B, B rings up C. Tell you what, let's
But
change
but
this
but the
rule, give it a
counter
chance.
argument is that A and B can ring each other up and go, let's vote against this because we don't want Caledonia to get better and then take our playoff place.
Then the counter argument is that it shouldn't have the opportunity at all because
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
wouldn't have
yeah,
to deal with that sort of
yeah,
politics. And that's
yeah,
that's where the failure of governance comes in. No one ever looks at the rules until they see something they don't like, and
yeah,
then bang, let's find a way of changing it. It's just not right. Sorry.
yeah.
Go on.
But in part, I suppose nobody ever looks at the rules because that rule doesn't really matter.
I used to look at the rules. I
Yeah,
used to
well,
send in
you're a
suggestions every
lawyer,
summer.
Dave. You get paid to
I
look at
used to send in
rules.
suggestions every blooming summer about the rules. Probably about 10 years ago, I went through them with literally line by line and changed as many as I could
Mm.
to make it a rational thing. But this what they're not even on the website. I know the
No,
Premier League
no.
rules aren't on the website. I get that. It's not necessarily commonplace. But the communication. You see, here's my issue, right? Um, if it wasn't for us, this wouldn't be shining a light, and this no one would really care.
No,
It's all
no,
fairly
no.
trivial, okay, in the big scheme of things. But if you don't respect your own competition, how can you possibly expect anybody else to respect your own competition
Mm,
and the integrity of that competition? That is where it gets me. And as you say, I'm a lawyer, so I'm a rules audit based person.
mm,
And, I'm your Biden, not your Trump, all that stuff.
mm.
But I just don't get it. I don't
Yeah.
get it. They might make more fun games in Caledonia, but
Well,
even then,
yeah,
the argument from basketball, GB basketball would be, well, hang on, you've used all these, yeah, go find some British players to play. You can
yeah,
still
yeah,
find players.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just easier. Let's be honest, it's just easier not to. It's easier to
I,
sign them.
I must confess, I'm slightly conflicted on it because A, as I say earlier, I think we've just nipped past the line
Yeah,
of equilibrium
yeah, I
on
think you're
it,
right.
and B, I don't like the fact that things move halfway through.
Yeah,
I understand the argument for it, and I totally get that 5 to 9 and 6 to 9 are two totally different things, and
yeah.
I'm not sure 6 to 12 is comparable to 5 to 9. Maybe 6 to 11 might be more comparable, but what's the difference between 11 and 12? But there's also something about me that inherently doesn't like having that option
Yeah.
because we've seen in the past, I'm sure we could both name coaches who just rifled through teams, rifled through players
Hmm.
because they could, because the
Because they
rules
could.
allowed them to, and
Yeah.
actually generally speaking, punters like to see the same people 1 year to the next, never mind 1 week to the next.
Teams that change a lot don't win.
Mm.
That's the history of it. They don't. I mean, if you're changing a
But that's
lot,
why they're changing, though, isn't it?
that's why that's changing a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't build up that chemistry. You don't win. So it's all knee jerk. It's all knee jerk to kind of curry a little bit of favor with the fans. Look what we're doing, etc. But as I say, the point being that once you politicize the regulatory aspect of the sport,
Mm,
which it is done, then that is to quote Sir Humphrey, you're on a very slippery slope.
mm,
6 points for a win, please.
mm.
I mean,
The
because
problem is the teams at the top would get the 6 points as well, so they'd
well,
get
they might, but
further
they'd still
away.
get yeah, of course it is. I'm not saying we have to agree. I'm thinking about the most outlandish thing that
Yeah,
nobody in their right mind would choose to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the reality is, the
Well,
only
there's a
reason,
lot of people I talk to that go, get rid of points. What do we need points for?
well,
And I
exactly,
go, yeah, but Brighton got Doctor Point. That was
yeah,
20
exactly.
years ago.
You're absolutely quite right. No, I think points out. I think there isn't necessarily have a punishment there,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, no, I just no, I just want to get them all in a room and bang all their heads together and say, have we got any long-term plan for this sport? Or are we just going to go from um, knee-jerk move to knee-jerk move? It just doesn't sit well. Sorry.
Mm. So it was 10-8 after 4 minutes in this game. We're talking
Which
about
game's this?
Leicester
I've
80,
forgotten.
yeah, Leicester 85, Caledonia 74, just in case you've forgotten. Leicester getting to the foul line. They're up 19-9 after 6 minutes. It didn't look like Caledonia could get a stop in the first quarter and that Leicester were going to cruise it.
Yeah, I've been in these games before. I've actually been on the right end of these games before, where if you're Leicester, it becomes a little bit difficult because you're
Mm,
looking at the bench of Caledonia, which has basically got Barnes and Malcolm on it, and thinking, oh, well, this game's just gonna just gonna wear them down. We're gonna keep
Mm,
playing. It kind of can almost take you out of your own game. We won a
mm,
game at Plymouth with six guys, and one of
yeah,
them was 17 years old. And I still remember looking at all the Plymouth guys warming up, looking at our bench,
yeah,
and seeing Fletcher, Jones, Lasker, and
yeah.
Flanoy on the bench, and thinking, who's going to handle the
Well,
basketball?
famously, the Fab Five of Birmingham in
Five at
whatever year
Birmingham,
that
yeah,
was, 90 something, or is
absolutely.
it 2000, whenever it was.
And it just plays in the head of, because teams develop a kind of a trust in each other. And also the opposition have to try and figure out, how to play against them. So I don't think Leicester were ever at their kind of, well, here's the thing. The fact that Robert had played four of his starters for more than 30 minutes
Yeah,
tells you in this game, which he really wouldn't have wanted to do.
no,
And he made mention on Sunday about it, the heavy minutes before the game. The fact that it indicated that, Caledonia hung around and
mm,
they did a good job. And Barnes played exceptionally well. And Whelan is obviously always going to be competitive. And Okafor controls the tempo of a game.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So against that, they're going to be a difficult team to blow out
yeah,
with in that way. Where they struggled a little bit was, I mean, Fagbende's finishing round the rim was just
mm,
really hurt them. I think he was one of eight, but he was missing from like 2 feet and 3 feet.
mm.
And had turnovers as well. So, they needed everybody to kind of contribute to score enough to stay close to Leicester, and they didn't quite do that.
Well, 2 minutes ago in the first quarter, 27-19. Leicester didn't score a field goal for 6 minutes. Caledonia went on a 15-2 run to 29-34. They swapped runs then until the end of
Yeah.
the third quarter, and that was then when Johnson hit a couple of threes. Abercrombie as well finished the quarter with a three, 62-53, and then another couple of threes from Johnson and Abercrombie at the start of the fourth quarter pushed it to 14 and finally safe. But the minutes thing, Rob didn't make a substitution in the third quarter.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you can see he's really, I remember thinking at the beginning of the fourth quarter, as I think you said on commentary, he was spot on, he's saying, play the next 5 minutes and get the last 5 minutes off.
Yeah.
And that, to be honest, that is, for me, that's 100% the right thing to
Yeah.
do. Used to do that all the time, use particularly if the opposition were playing that bench,
Mm,
put your starters on, put the game away. If you're up by 10 after four, after the beginning of the fourth quarter, you win the next 3 minutes by five, you've won the game. They win the
mm,
next 3 minutes by five, doesn't your starters are coming back in cold. There's a
yeah.
game, so
Yeah.
put it away. Always, and players don't get as tired as they say they do.
Mm,
Players can play when they're in the rhythm. They want to play,
mm,
and maybe you're big, you have to rest a little bit because he's doing all the grunt work. But you tell me Zach Jackson can't play all those minutes. He can
yeah.
manage himself.
And Thompson is probably not the guy that needs a rest in that team, is
Maybe not.
he?
I think times, yeah. I think you
Yeah.
could, you can keep going.
Yeah.
So he did absolutely the right thing, and it just kind of their defense just kind of strangled Caledonia enough. And
Mm,
the thing with Leicester is they are spurtable, so there's always that shot they're going to make. Abercrombie
mm,
make like in the last game, make a
mm,
few threes. Wright makes a couple of threes.
mm,
Johnson, you talk about, so often in transition as well off the opposition mistakes.
mm.
So they can, and once they go up 9 or 10, they're tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're tough to score on enough because they don't turn the ball over that much, so you can't really run on them.
Abercrombie, 27 points, 5 of 8 for three, 9 rebounds. Jackson, 16 points, 5 assists. Thompson, 5 of 6 shooting for 14 points. Barnes, 10 of 14 for 22 points. Whelan, 17 points and 8 assists. Okuraffel, 15. They had 19 second chance points and 17 points off turnovers, although most of that was in the first half on both of those
And that's
stats.
probably not the biggest news out of Caledonia this week, though.
No,
No.
no. Let's go to Newcastle. Newcastle Eagles 74, London Lions 67. Debut for Trey Pulliam, and straight into the starters as well. Long and Neighbour didn't play. Had to Begovic not there for London. Welcome to Super League basketball, Trey. 2 fouls inside 4 minutes. Not a lot of offense in the early stages of this game. 4 points
No.
to 8 after 6 minutes, Dave.
Yeah, yeah, difficult. I mean, Newcastle have this habit of playing the style of the opposition.
Mm,
It's bizarre. I've never come
yeah,
across, I don't think I've ever come across a team like them before.
yeah.
Where, they can play whichever way the opposition is playing. And this game was it. I enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the kind of the chess match
You're
probably
going to tell us that
game.
you didn't like Cheshire against Newcastle
I'm
on
going to say, I'm going to tell you, I absolutely hated it. You've
you
set me up for that
miserable
early.
old git, Dave.
You've set me up, and that's not because of the score. That is not because
Yeah,
of the score. I got gradually irritated during that game, but we'll
yeah,
get to that game later. But I enjoyed this game because it was each possession was valued. I think that's
mm,
probably the way I would put it.
yeah,
And each
yeah.
possession was worked for and was hard. And each team has certain ways of playing, and I thought Newcastle exploited London's offensive flaws quite well by helping off the right players and making the right players shoot the ball, and they did a good job on Rye. I also thought London weren't, and London started off, yeah, the game started off very slowly offensively, but nevertheless, there was still a nice kind of tempo to it. London didn't play with the force that they played with on Sunday in any way, shape, or form. They were coming off that loss to Surrey, um, and I thought they were okay, but they didn't quite have that kind of aggression about them, and Rye was noticeably frustrated by the end of the game, the way they were playing. Um, Newcastle really struggled to create much in the half court, but
Mm,
what Newcastle have is a lot of shot makers. So what they did a really good job of was hunting mismatches and
mm,
the individual scorers scoring the basketball. Particularly a night every time Knight was on delay, he was scoring, you know. And Pulliam, I thought, really was what Newcastle had been missing, to be
mm,
honest.
mm,
Kind of an organising point guard who doesn't get flustered. Um, was able to score the ball, albeit it wasn't kind of ball dominant apart from a couple of possessions, and played in his decent size and plays decent defense.
mm.
So I thought I was really pleasantly surprised by him. He's certainly better than the other two they've had this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so the game was kind of and I'm going to give it also a shout out for the refs as well because they were getting dogs abuse in the crowd in the um
Arena.
in the arena, and yet when I watched the game back on TV, and I was a few of
Are
them
they
I was
getting dogs abuse from you, Dave? Is that how you
no, they
fessing
weren't
up
getting it from
here?
me.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
because no, they actually weren't. Because there was it was like, oh, whatever. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. Okara got a second foul. I didn't see it, but in fact, he just kind of pushed off with his hand, just caught the guy and caught Peterson in the face. There were a couple of calls down the far end as well, where no, which everybody was booing and all that sort of. But I think when you look them back, most of them are right. There
Mm,
was one call. I don't know if you spotted it. You probably didn't. Which I'm going to mention simply because every so often Ian McDonald stares at me, so I've got to say
mm,
something back on this show. They threw a lob for Ovi Soko in the second quarter.
mm,
I think Alan Aikens gave him a bump on the lob, and they called two shots. No, I'm assuming they weren't in team fouls. I don't think they were. But I'm not sure how you can have be an active shooting when you're bumped before you jump for an alley-oop.
mm. Yeah, interesting
Yeah, that was
question.
I mean, if it was team fouls, I apologise for that as well. I might be
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
But
yeah.
apart from that, and I'm saying this to all the Newcastle fans who were absolutely slating the refs both during and after the game. I watched it back, and it wasn't really most of the calls the call were right, and certainly in the first half, and then in the second half, it kind of got a little bit more Newcastle
So
went
just
front.
let's go through it. So London were 5 to 8 points ahead. James and Pulliam got it down to three at halftime. Knight and Okoro then hit three threes to start the third quarter to put Eagles 44-38 up. They then scored the last 5 points of the third quarter to 59-48. And then Sean Flood with the first 9 points of the fourth quarter made it a 2 point game, 59-57. But after that, it always felt to me like Eagles had enough of a cushion.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the third quarter was really interesting because, as I say, you look at all those. Newcastle made some tough shots early
Mm,
on, but they got stops. That's the most important. They were playing that, with a defensive cadence about them. Knight coming off the bench, playing with a point guard
mm,
instead of being the point guard, looked like he'd been kind of released. You know what I mean? He was able to get to the spots, get to the corner, make hustle plays, offensive rebound the ball as well and made some tough threes. But particularly when he got mismatched with, as I say, with Delaire in particular, he was stepping back and making shots. And then, yeah, Flood kind of took over for a little bit,
mm,
and
mm,
and, and it was almost like, who is this guy? Um, and he made some open shots, but he made some tough shots as well.
mm,
But they never quite, and Ovi never got going in this game to the degree that they needed him to without Hadji Begovic, and Delaire never quite got going. And it was just like Newcastle wanted this game a little bit more. They also guarded Peterson very well. They helped off Peterson. And
Mm,
Pulliam was surprised. Pulliam was really good at the scouting report in this game. And Peterson, I think Drew said in commentary, he's over 8 for 3 by the end of the game. I mean, he made
mm,
one on Sunday, but they were stepping off and challenging him to beat them. They were challenging Adebayo to beat them. So they had the right guys shooting for London,
mm,
and they really kind of restricted Rye and Brisker. And Brisker turned his ankle early, which kind of hurt them as well.
mm,
Um, but overall, it really kind of gave you the game, which really gave you the impression that how much there was all small margins in this league.
mm. So, speaking of small margins, 26 seconds to go. London down five. Flood coming off the screen, Pulliam running out to him. It's really hard on the camera angle to tell because it's the other side of Flood's body. But the way his arm went made it look to me like a foul. He's certainly arguing a foul. Now, I don't think the referee, I think it was Ian McDonald, would be able to see the contact for the same reason that we can't quite see the contact. So then you're
I didn't see
relying
any.
on
I didn't see it either. And again, I'm on that side of the gym, so
yeah, so I was going to say that's isn't that where you sit, Dave, as to
yeah.
whether and I paused it. I sort of scrubbed back and forth. I'm like, does he hit him? I'm not quite sure because he sort of runs across him and because the arm's going
Yeah.
forward, his reaction is like he's been hit. But because you've got
That he wants you to think he's been it.
yeah, yeah, he wants
That's
you
the
to.
downside.
You've got I think it's was it Paul Unsworth on the opposite side
Yeah.
and Chris Dodds on the baseline. So it's nobody's really got a really good angle to see whether there is any contact on that. But
It
he was
would have to have been on the arm,
yeah, yeah,
because
on the arm, yeah,
there's
yeah.
nothing on the body, and yeah, and he missed by reasonable. My initial thought was that he played great D. That was my slightly biased initial thought,
My
but
initial thought was it was a foul. That's
yeah,
why.
yeah,
That's why
exactly.
I didn't know
Um,
whether we get the non-biased angle from you, Dave. But
no, no, that was my. No, I'm just
yeah,
going what my initial thought was.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't see a foul,
Yeah.
and I think when you're in that situation, if you don't see it, you can't call it.
No,
Uh,
no,
You're
and as
wrong.
I say, because it would be on the arm and therefore it's in front. You can't see his arm because his body's in the way, and where Ian McDonald's is placed, he's going to have the same blocked
Yeah, and
view.
Bozic, to be fair, Bozic was asking for it, and Flood was
Mm,
kind of asking for it. So yeah,
mm,
maybe
yeah.
Newcastle could break. I think probably if they caught a break, they probably just about earned it over the course
Mm.
of the game.
Newcastle got the rebound. That was the end of the game.
Yeah.
So Knight, 5 of 6 from 3 point range for 22 points. Okoro, 17 points, and Pulliam, 14. Flood, 5 of 10 shooting for 14 points. Rye, 13. No other players in double figures, but they did shoot 51% from the floor, although 17 turnovers didn't help them.
No, and yeah, they look like a team in flux a little bit.
Mm,
I think that the identity of that London team is that they have to play really hard. They have to play with force, and they didn't really in this game. And as I say, Newcastle is a little bit like against the Newcastle game against Leicester. They got to the point where they're not moving the ball that much, but they're picking on mismatches.
mm,
And those guys are scoring the ball again. Okoro and Knight in particular are scoring the ball on mismatches, and that can be very frustrating because you're playing good defense,
mm.
but then you guys making tough shots, and eventually, it comes down to actually these aren't that tough a shot because of who's guarding the player that's shooting them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting.
Uh, Surrey 89ers 61, Sheffield Sharks 63. No hunt for Surrey still. Lawrence only played 4 minutes. It wasn't obvious as to why that was the case. He came out at the end of the quarter, never came back in. Sheffield had signed Scotty Lindsay as Chapman is out long term, but he didn't play in this game yet. He was there. Obviously not registered. Surrey, unusually slow start to this one. They normally start games really well. It was Clay and Groves doing the damage. Sheffield led 11-17 early on.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'm told, and I will. I didn't. I said I wasn't going to say this, but I'm told that Lawrence wasn't very well, so that's why he didn't
Oh,
play.
okay.
So I mean, if that's right, it's right. If it's wrong, ignore it.
Mm,
But in any event, no particular story. Um, in relation to Sheffield were, well, firstly, sorry we're due this game,
mm,
right? Because over the cadence and the flux of the season, they've played some tough games against some good teams. They're coming off win in London, a blowout of Newcastle. You're at that point, that kind of apex of
mm,
not overconfidence, but false confidence
mm,
point. whereby everything is going so well, nothing could possibly go wrong
Yeah,
anymore,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But they're coming up against a team who's actually entirely changed. And suddenly, instead of Chapman being there, the ball's been, and Chapman and Nixon having the ball the whole time, the ball's being shared around.
Mm.
Now everybody's touching the ball. Now, the guy who was a standout in this game for me was Jeffries.
Jeffries, yeah.
Shooter, because he came out. Why? Because one, he's starting. Two, he's seeing the ball, so he's not just a bit pop there stuck in the
Mm.
corner. And three, he's playing defense. He played the best
Mm.
defensive possession all season on Jalen Ray,
Mm.
where he stood in front of him three times and blocked his shot.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
not a Jalen Ray. And so now, so suddenly Sheffield have got the kind of that. Those other guys are thinking, "Oh, hang on a minute, it's a little bit of me now," and they were getting away from that a little bit with Chapman. It's not to say Chapman was doing the wrong thing, but it just the balance of the team was impacted. So it's like a bucket of water. You take Chapman out, but the water comes back up to the level, because other
yeah,
players pick it up.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I thought Sheffield early on benefited from that, and I thought Surrey early on were just a little bit. They didn't play with the same force that they played against London and Newcastle with. And that's such a horrible phrase because people can probably ask us, what does it mean playing with the same force? It just means getting to your spot. It means
Yeah.
kind of having that purpose in your look. Jalen Ray in that game against London, Jalen Ray gave up a 3-point shot. He came back down and just drilled one into
Yeah,
creative
yeah,
into somebody's
yeah,
face,
yeah.
right? That's playing with force. That's playing with purpose. That's saying, I'm here, we're here, we ain't losing this game. I
Yeah.
might screw one. I didn't see that in this game. And as such, it kind of allowed Sheffield to get out to a lead. Um,
So Jeffries, you talked about with making shots. Sheffield extended their lead. Sorry, we're going nine. It went 9 for 35 in the first half from the floor, so they only scored 26 points. We're down 12 at halftime. Mid third quarter, Ray and Steele hit threes as a 10-0 run by the 89ers got it down to 42-44. Mid fourth quarter, Ray making plays again had Surrey ahead. Shall we get to the last couple of
But
minutes on
yeah,
this one?
just what happened over the course of the game, though. I was saying about Sheffield is that unfortunately, whilst everybody was getting more of the ball, there's a reason that Chapman had a lot of the ball
Yeah,
beforehand
yeah, yeah,
because he was the engine and one of the most efficient offensive players in the league. So when the game slows down a little bit, then you've got to try and create your offense.
hmm.
Okay, and that they struggled a little bit with that, and Surrey got themselves into the situation where they had a chance to win the game. However, they lost. Just in the game, just like in the game against Sheffield in Sheffield, Lawrence didn't play in the second
Hmm.
half.
Hmm.
Lloyd went with Parkinson to fill those minutes. He struggled, turned the ball over a couple of times, shot an air ball. That's 3 or 4 possessions that they lost because you're giving a young kid a chance to play and get better.
Hmm.
Okay, small margins.
Yeah,
He wouldn't have played those possessions if Lawrence had been there. And I thought those possessions really hurt them by the end of the game. And I'm not saying he did anything wrong. It's just the way it is.
hmm. Hmm.
Um, that said, Surrey got themselves into a position to win this game, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
they should be really, really disappointed
Hmm.
that they didn't, because for all the nice things we've talked about them being contenders or being at a far higher level than they have been for a while, they're still 4-8,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
should really be 6-6.
6-6.
You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
That they're a 6-6 team, which is 4-8.
Yeah,
So
and actually, that it wouldn't be a stretch to say they could have been 8-4 as
no,
well.
it never is. You
Yeah,
always remember the ones you
yeah,
could have won,
yeah.
that you lost. You never tend to count the ones you could have lost that you
Yeah,
won.
yeah, they
You
do.
know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah, yeah,
you got to
yeah,
be
yeah,
careful with that.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So the
So,
funny, this was a game I thought they didn't quite have the belief in the end to win this game. Didn't know where they were going.
so 2:20 to go. James with a great shot on the shot clock buzzer to make it
Yeah.
61-57.
Crazy shot on the turnaround on the baseline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was like, okay, well, that was a kind of a forceful play. That
yeah,
was the play which says we're winning. I thought actually the way the game was, I thought that was the game. I thought that was
yeah.
okay. Okay, that gave me belief in them.
2 minutes to go. Jeffries to the rim, 61-69. Ray had an in and out three. Jeffries missed a three at the other
Yeah,
end.
Reyes was halfway down from
Yeah, it
Mount.
was.
That was
Yeah, it
another one of
was.
those things you can't.
Yeah.
That's just
Uh,
inches, millimeters.
Gooden then slipped on the floor, loses the ball. Glasgow ran it back. He actually missed, but Jeffries dunked in the rebound with 112 to go, tied the scores at 61-61. Steele then missed a corner three. Nixon missed one at the top, but Rotino with an offensive rebound. Nixon takes it in 61-63 with 24 and a half seconds
That was a
to
really tough
play.
shot by
Yeah,
Prentice Nixon, but more importantly, it was a winning rebound by Coutinho.
yeah, yeah,
You know, these are players. When you're in the last minute, every little play matters. And there are certain players who step up and make winning plays, and the winning player isn't Nixon scoring the ball. The winning player is Coutinho at 6'4", being the guy who gets him the extra shot.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why he's on the court at the time.
Uh, Timeout didn't advance the ball, obviously, because there's 24 and a half seconds to go. Ray with the drive, tough, off balance, sort of heavy, misses everything, falls to Adelican. Nixon knocks it away from him, and Anderson gets it. Anderson was fouled. Lloyd was asking for a foul against Adelican. Can't really see anything. It didn't look like there was any complaints in real time from Adelican either. It looked like a good play.
I didn't see a foul.
No.
I watched the replay backwards. He was kind of, as you say, a little bit out of control, going sideways as opposed to downhill.
I think it was the Delican thing that he was
Yeah, well,
arguing.
that
I
was, I
thought
thought it was
Nixon
just,
poked it
just put the
away
ball
from
in his
him.
hands. Yeah,
Yeah,
dropped the ball.
yeah,
And again, the winning play,
yeah,
winning play, to be there to make that extra effort play. Because, Dele can play well in this game. He was kind of he was a match for Clay in this game. You
yeah,
know, there's some solid big men in the league. And then, yeah, they got the foul, and then Jamel decided to make it interesting, yeah.
yeah. 5.8 seconds to go. Misses both free throws. James rebounds, dribbles down court. He didn't. To me, it struck me as he didn't quite realize what his best option was, and he ended up losing the ball and time
Even
expired.
James, I mean, if he only played the first 39 minutes and 55 seconds of games, he'd be a world superstar.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's not his kind. It kind of the missed second shot means it's a live ball. A live ball's in
yeah,
his hands. There's less than 5 seconds left. You don't really have much to do, and it's not a situation whereby he would probably have been in much in the past, bringing the
mm,
basketball to court in that time. But he was defeated by indecision, wasn't he?
yeah, yeah. That's a good
That was the
phrase.
problem. And if it had gone, if it had been better, if it had been in the hands of one of the guards and he could have
Yeah,
ran the floor. But yeah, all you want him to do there is basically just peg it down the court as fast as he can, pull up and
yeah,
shoot it. And he
yeah,
didn't really do that. He hesitated, then waited, and it kind of dribbled away.
yeah,
A disappointing loss for Surrey. That's 2 games against Sheffield that they could have won. It's a great win for Sheffield because they're down bodies, um, and they've found a way to win a game whereby they were down four at Surrey with 2 minutes to go.
yeah,
And they haven't, and they've done it with defense because they haven't given up a point in the last 2.5 minutes
yeah, yeah,
from that
yeah.
James jump shot onwards. And if you win you have to win on the road. You win with defense.
Yeah. Ray, 17 points, 5 assists, good and 12. James, 11, 21 of 64 for 32% field goal. Jeffries, 17, Clay, 15, the only two in double figures. They were 26 of 71 for 36%
Yeah.
field goal shooting. Let's come to Sunday. Bristol Flyers 71, Caledonia Gladiators 58. I've only seen the 7 minutes highlights on DAZN. I don't know if it
I haven't even watched
ever
them.
appeared, did it?
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
If they can't manage to figure it out how to get it on. It's happened a couple of times this year with the cup games.
Mm,
For some reason, they seem to be so different. I don't know if they're distributed differently to the zone or on um, different kind of tabs on the website.
mm,
And we know the feed was there, but obviously
mm.
they weren't able to get feed on the computer for some reason.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so it is what it is. I followed the live stats a little bit, but ultimately it just looked like Caledonia ran out of gas on the live stats. They
yeah.
stayed for 3 quarters and they ran out of gas.
Alain Louis was playing, and Elijah Kane was back as well. So that's both positives for them. Flyers made four threes, led 12-5. Caledonia tied it up at 16 all. Bristol led for most of the first half. 10-0 run had the Gladiators up 45-47 in the third quarter, but then Robinson, six in a 7-2 start, had them six up, and then five in about 15 seconds from Walsh, which I did see on the highlights with 3:40 to go, made it safe. Johnson, 18 points, 5 assists. Robinson, 16.7 rebounds. Sheffield, 15. Kane, 14, 6 rebounds. Barnes, 13 points and 10 rebounds. Zakirapo, 11 points and 6 assists. Let's go to London. London Lions 91, Leicester Riders 71. Hadzabegovic still out for London. Jackson, 2 fouls inside 2 minutes, but it was an even first quarter, 20-19. I need a power cable, Dave, so just chat for
Right?
30 seconds.
Oh no, things I could say at this point
I'm
when I've
still
got
listening. I can
back to me.
still hear you.
Oh, never mind. Okay. Jackson was a bit frustrated by the first foul he got and committed a very silly second foul, which was a push in the back on, I think it was Peterson, I can't remember, on an offensive rebound. Um, that second foul within 2 minutes meant Robert sit him down. That then plays havoc with Leicester's rather limited rotation as it is, particularly as Bowman is one of the guys who's been spelling Jackson and he's out for the season. The limited rotation meant that Wright had to come in very early and he ended up playing basically most of the first half, and that's more minutes than he's more consecutive minutes than he's been used to playing. But most impressively, I thought early on in this game, London was the force London played with. Rye in particular came out like a guy who had lost 3 times to this team and was playing for a team that had lost 2 games in a row and was fed up with losing.
Yeah.
And he got a couple of offensive rebounds, he got a cut for a layup, he knocked down a shot, but just the level of the body language of London, I thought, was kind of a lot better than it was on Friday night in Newcastle. And it
Mm.
wasn't bad on Friday night in Newcastle, but they were just there. They weren't just there in this game. They were ready. They were ready for this game. I think they felt that they owed Leicester one, and um, and losing Jackson early is tough because, as I say, there's a knock-on effect for Leicester, not
Mm.
necessarily immediately, a knock-on effect as it goes, and that kind of happened around the beginning of the second quarter break, around the second
Yeah.
quarter.
And Lions had a 12-0 run at that point to lead 32 to 19. And then
Well, what's
slightly.
also what I should say is that Soko Ovi played again a different level of Ovi 3 years ago. Ovi's playing what, French Pro A,
Mm.
you know. Ovi's still a high level player. The year out last year, um, I don't think he's at his highest level every game, but he's now starting with
Mm.
Hagi. That gives him a little bit more kind of impetus. And I mean, he dunked on Thompson in probably the first 3 minutes,
I,
and that
I I
was
think I think he remembered the last game where he against Thompson, where Thompson
yeah.
thoroughly won the battle. I think it's
Yeah,
fair to say.
exactly. He basically brought it.
Yeah,
To use the
yeah, yeah.
phrase, he brought it. He played at his level. And that again, with the force that Raya was playing at, the force that Soko plays at that way, they become a very tough team.
Mm.
And then what they needed was a little bit of outside shooting, and they got that from Flood, and they got that from, I think Sandy made a couple, and obviously Rye as well, and
Mm.
Briscoe's always a threat. So the force that they played with helped them. Now, I was it was a kind of it was comparing it to the Newcastle London game on Friday night because that was fresh in my memory. And what you saw was that certainly for much of the first half, Leicester we've talked about they're very systematic. Hunter is looking to set people up. He's looking to find the right pass. They're looking to throw. They're looking to get people on cheap threes. Wright got a couple of cheap threes early on little flare screen plays, that type of thing. It's all very set. They don't try and beat you with their athletic ability as much as they beat you with their smartness and their
Mm.
kind of the way they play. Now that's hard, as Rob talked about afterwards. That's hard against London because of their physicality on their
Mm.
defense.
Mm.
They're fighting through every screen. Now, what Leicester really don't have in their armory is what Newcastle have in their armory, which was kind of let's just get a mismatch and let's just go at somebody one on one.
Mm.
They don't. You don't see Hunter breaking someone down like you saw Knight breaking somebody
Mm.
down. And there's advantages and disadvantages to that. But what it means is that if you haven't got your if you haven't if you're coming up against the very best version of London, then they were struggling to create shots in the first half.
Mm.
Obviously, Jackson sat down for 10 minutes doesn't help
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
he's the guy who normally steps up when you're having a drought, and so he was never in the flow of the game. But I thought kind of their inability to get almost to have an individual scorer
Yeah,
really
yeah.
kind of hurt them in this game. And it was only when they got their flow going at the beginning of the third quarter for a little bit. But even then, it was off team players, it was off catch and
Yeah,
shoots and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
We were able to get going.
Johnson hopped out with about 30 seconds to go in his second quarter. Looked like an ankle injury. He did come back at the start of third, but he only lasted a couple of minutes. Uh, Leicester were 12 of 33 at halftime. London at 5 of 10 from 3-point range at halftime. Leicester started the third quarter 16-4 to cut it to 4, 53 49, as you say. There was an Abercrombie and one a 4 point play, and I think
4 point
there
play, yeah.
was there a Thompson and one inside as well.
Thompson and one very, very quickly. It was like
Yeah,
half the deficit within a minute and a half.
yeah,
And they came
yeah,
out because they came out and played with the force that
yeah,
London had. But it's like, you get back to the kind of the bottom of the mountain, don't you? You've still got to
yeah,
climb it and go over
yeah,
the
yeah.
top. And they didn't, as I say, with the body short, losing Johnson as well. They didn't really have enough to kind of continue that offensive effort.
Uh,
And as I
uh,
say, there's a lot of people in there. It's a big, it's a big game. They've got 4,500 people in there.
yeah,
Credit,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So there's a big atmosphere. Or Ovi's up for it. Rise up for
Mm,
it. They lost a couple of games in a row. That was a game London on the schedule. London had to win. Leicester had
yeah,
four
yeah.
start 30 minutes on Friday night. London had to win that game on that schedule. And Leicester showed enough whereby if you don't pay attention to them, they will beat you quietly.
Mm, mm.
Um, but London, with their bench and they've got a considerably deeper bench than Leicester, um, and their energy and eventually their shot making, they kind of put it away in the middle of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Sandy three, five from Flood in the fourth quarter, pushed it from 65-61 to 73-61. They had a 14-0 run late on to seal it, but it was that first run really that did it. Let's come to the fracas at the end.
Yeah, great.
1:30 to go. You can't really see it initially because it happens off camera, but Shelton and Rye got into something from the baseline camera on the replay. You can see it.
Yeah,
So what happened was London were attacking the basket. Rye sort of fell into Shelton. There's a bit of a maybe coming together, but not really anything. They then run off down court. Rye steps across in front of him. It's deliberate because you can see him
oh, yeah,
looking at him twice.
oh, yeah.
It's the old insurance job of run in front of somebody and reverse into them sort of thing
Absolutely. Dreaming,
in the
total
car.
limit. Yeah,
And then Shelton then sort of walks into him on the floor, maybe a little closer to a kick than a step. Rye grabs his leg. Then there's some pushing and shoving. Soko comes running in as well, and everybody's coming in, and eventually it calms down. The referees, when they worked it all out, gave Rye an offensive foul. Shelton got an unsportsmanlike foul and a disqualification. Soko got a disqualification for his involvement in it as well. And I think that was almost right. I think the only bit that I would disagree with in any of that was I think what Rye did deserved an unsportsmanlike foul
yeah. I think
because he's done it deliberately and that sort of natural justice of if Rye runs to the corner, nothing happens. There was nothing going on, and then he didn't do that. There's a massive fracas, and yet he gets free throws at the end of it. It doesn't quite sit right.
yeah, I'm pretty much on board with that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Rye very cute. He obviously knows that Shelton's a bit of a hothead. And as you say, there was something happened on the ground, but not much. The other thing that Rye did was Rye grabbed Shelton's leg.
Mm,
That's not good. If you're
no,
on the ground, you're grabbing a player's leg, because that is really that lots of things can go wrong there.
yeah,
But Rye he did, as you say, step right across him, and he
mm,
created contact, and then kind of was pushed onto the ground and did the what? And then, as you say, Shelton moved towards him, whether it was a step or a kick, I don't know, but he moved towards him. Ryan grabs onto his leg. But what then happens is Shelton swings out at Peterson for no
yeah,
reason.
yeah, yeah,
Peterson, the 12-year-old lad from around the corner who
yeah,
just
yeah,
comes
yeah,
on somewhere and see that. Oh, but basically it looked to me like if it wasn't a punch, it was a slap.
yeah,
Uh, but it wasn't a push, put it that way.
yeah, yeah.
But that was an automatic
So
unsportsmanlike.
yeah,
My
so to me
disqualification, sorry.
that's an unsports. Sorry, I think what Shelton did in his reaction to Rye is an
Yeah,
unsportsmanlike. I think what he
yeah,
did to Peterson is a disqualification, and I think
absolutely.
Soko running in and getting involved is a disqualification. I've no
I
problem.
immediately, my initial thought was that Soko would kind of hit Shelton back, but then when you look
Mm.
at it back, he didn't quite. It was more kind of a protecting thing. I think I think Soko could be argued to. I think you could argue he was. Did he escalate to the degree of a disqualification? probably.
I think he's because the other thing is you've got Ed grabbing him.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to talk about, which is I'm not sure what the situation is with refs grabbing players.
Mm,
I prefer refs to stand out the side and watch them chin each other and then
mm,
go in and sort it out afterwards.
mm,
To be blunt, because I don't, I think I remember we had a fracas, we had an end of game situation against
mm,
Leicester once in 2014, where your mate Drew Lasker was running down the court celebrating with his hand up as we got a rebound and we just won the game in overtime. Unfortunately, he didn't realize as he was running down the court, he's about 4 feet from Rob.
mm,
Rob rather took that rather personally and kind of don't celebrate my face, kind of knocked his arm, and then Drew Sullivan's off the bench. Everybody's off the bench, and it's all
mm.
push and shovey because of
Yeah, I remember it.
the ramifications of the cup final earlier on. And the thing was, at one Neil Wilkinson, who was refereeing that, was right in the middle of it,
Mm,
and he told me I was right in the middle of it too. And he actually said to me, "Right, Cook, it was Malik Cook.
mm.
He's disqualified. He's out of here. He just put his hands on me, right? Now everybody had their hands on everybody,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And we got the video, and when we got the video, it was clear that actually Malik was actually trying to put his hands on one of the Leicester players.
Yeah,
Neil was just right in there, right? And we could demonstrate that. You have to accept what I say about that.
yeah,
You have
yeah,
no
yeah,
reason.
yeah,
But Neil's down here, Malik's up here, and all that stuff. So he ultimately didn't get banned. But the refs put themselves in a very difficult position when they're right in the middle of it, if you know what I
yeah,
mean. Hard
yeah,
to see though. And I don't know what the feedback guidance is. That might be absolutely right. It might just be what you do. It might be
yeah,
just because he was there at the time. I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
But it
yeah,
makes it very difficult to assess actually the culpability of Soko
yeah, yeah,
if you're holding them back.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
be holding them back to say, "Oh, I don't have to disqualify you because I was holding you back."
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you're some kind of a participant as opposed to a administrator,
yeah,
which isn't, I don't think, is great. But
yeah,
again, difficult situation. Obviously, it's a coach's job to run in there and grab hold of the ball.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
great. It's the only time I was ever allowed in the court.
yeah, yeah.
Great, you can run in the
So,
court. Oh,
so, so as I say, with the exception of I thought Rye was very fortunate.
yeah,
I thought the rest of the punishment was, and the thing about it is, it goes back to going back to the sort of natural justice of it all. Is Soko's probably going to get a game or two banned now because he's already got however many points that he's got,
yeah.
and unless they've changed the rules, which we don't know,
See what the rules
it
are.
used to be every 5 points was another game, so therefore you
I think
get
it's every
DQ'd
10.
from
Yeah, I think you got 18 points, and I think
yeah.
it's every 10.
It
Um,
used to be 10, 15, 20, 25. I'm sure.
all right, I think it's 10, 20, 30 now, and I think, I
Uh,
might be wrong, and I think you get a 9 for an automatic
yeah.
disqualification.
So
That'll be right.
so he's automatically going to get one
Yeah,
game
yeah,
ban, and
yeah.
if it's 25, he might get two, and then Shelton might get
I think
more
Shannon
than
gets
nine,
2.
and he might get a ban, and it's all because of Ryan.
Right.
He
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
two free throws.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think, look, Shelton has to stop waving his arms around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, he has to stop hitting people. The bottom line is you can push people, you can do all sorts of stuff, but you can't start raising your hands the
yeah,
way he's doing.
yeah, yeah,
And he got away with one at Surrey,
yeah,
and he didn't get away with this one. And it's particularly with Leicester with their lack of depth.
yeah, yeah,
He has to be, it's just like you can't be doing that. I know, right? I know you can't be so easily provocable that
yeah,
teams know that they can go out and provoke you.
yeah, yeah,
And you
yeah,
certainly can't be losing a game for your team when you're down 20 with a minute and a half to go.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
You can push, you can shove, you can posture, you can bounce, you can give it all of
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Pretend to be as hard as you can. The minute that you raise your hands and you swing your hands at somebody, no, I think he's probably going to get 2 games for that.
yeah,
From
yeah,
what I've watched, so he's got to be more careful. He just can't be like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right,
That's it. We're
seven.
finished now, aren't we?
Hey, yeah, yeah,
We're
no more
finished now,
games,
aren't we?
Dave.
No
Oh,
more
wait,
games.
wait, I've got another piece of paper here underneath. Rice, 17 points, 10 rebounds. Soko, 16 points, 11 rebounds. Flood, 15 points, 5 of 8. Breakout weekend for Sean Flood.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, he's got a decent background. He can.
Mm,
And the thing is, sometimes it's about putting somebody in a situation where they have the responsibility and
mm,
the opportunity at the same time. And teams are now going to have to guard him a little bit. He didn't just score. He didn't just make threes against Newcastle. He got to the rim a couple of times as well. He showed a bit of shiftiness to his left as well. So he's now going to have to appear on team scouting reports a little bit.
mm, yeah.
Um, and they need that because they don't have that. Without everybody's so wise to Brisker.
Mm,
Everybody is running Brisker off, right?
yeah.
Everybody's running Brisker off the 3-point line. So they're going to need that from Flood and they're going to need some scoring from Peterson as well.
Yeah. Thompson, 14 points, 10 rebounds. Wright, 13. Hunter, 11 points and 6 assists. Let's come to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 106, Newcastle Eagles 103. And Dave, somebody pointed out to me after the game, one of our avid listeners, that a few weeks ago, Dave, you said that Nick Timberlake was going to go for 40 on somebody. He went for
Yeah.
37. You must really enjoy being right, Dave.
I'm delighted. It thrills me. No, but he's got that. Yeah, I get that. And he's in a team which is absolutely suited to what he brings, Yeah. And to be fair, he's got his legs now. And we were a bit sarcastic about the first couple of games, but
Yeah,
he's played at Kansas. He's a
yeah,
Jayhawk. He
yeah,
can he
yeah,
can play.
yeah,
There's no
yeah.
question about that. Question was how would he assimilate? Um,
Before we get into the game, let me just Atwood is out for Cheshire. Long was out for Newcastle. Neighbour and Defoe didn't play; they were dressed. It didn't look like Spencer was going to play
no.
either until Okoro fouled out with 2.5 minutes to go. Don't know whether that's coach's decision or it's trophy final related or any of that with the three guys who didn't play or weren't going to play. This was a relentless pace. I mean, there was a White hit a couple of threes. It was 15-8. Newcastle on 8. Our response 15-6. This was just unbelievably speedy.
It was a scoring race.
Mm,
It was a scoring race. Um, and I find it difficult to analyze games like that
mm,
because there really wasn't much sophistry or sophisticatedness to it. It was two teams just basically going up and down,
going
getting
at it, yeah.
basically whatever shot that they wanted. At tight, Cheshire have this habit of crashing the offensive board, which is great if they get it, but means that the other team get a run out if they don't. Um, Newcastle have this kind of habit, as I say, of playing to the style of the opposition. So, the very first play of the game, Planutis runs past one screen on the baseline, he's wide open for a corner three,
Mm,
you know, and that just kind of continued. I was a little bit I was more frustrated with Newcastle, not even after the game, but during the game than I was. Cheshire were absolutely true to themselves, I
mm.
thought.
Well, this,
Absolutely.
this this is the point. Newcastle can win a game. What was it? 74-67. Cheshire, I don't think can.
No, of course
But
they
they
can't.
can win 106, 103.
And three, particularly in their gym.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it's actually a game that Newcastle should have won. Newcastle left about 12 points out there on the
Mm.
foul line.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
and and had a little bit of tough luck in the fourth quarter with Pulliam's injury,
Mm,
which really impacted the game down the stretch when the point guard turned the ball over three times. But beyond that, it's a scoring race. If you get in a scoring
mm.
race at Cheshire, don't blame me when you lose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, don't turn around and say, "Oh, wow, and look, what a great game it was when we lose." When you lose in the last minute. You saw what happened with Cheshire in Caledonia. They were seven down with 51 seconds left, and they come back
Yeah,
and won.
yeah, yeah,
Now
yeah,
they're five down with 40 seconds left. They come back and win,
yeah,
and that's the difference between 5 and 7 and 7 and 5.
yeah, yeah.
So I know you got to go through the game, but in relation to the game,
Well, I mean, let's be fair. There's not a lot to go. Okoro was scoring freely. Newcastle out to an 8 point lead. Scott Grayson and Timberlake pulled the Knicks back 55-44, 3 minutes to halftime. 110 points, which is the most of the season on the board at
yeah, I
halftime. The
thought,
other two highest were Cheshire at home to Bristol and Cheshire at home to
yeah.
Sheffield. Knight then takes over scoring in the third quarter. Eagles 76-70 ahead with 12 and a half minutes to go. Massive foul issues for Cheshire, but we just keep going up and down.
Oh, and it's foul issues for Newcastle as well. In the day, I think more Newcastle players fouled out than Cheshire players fouled out.
It came
Um,
later in the game, though, with the
Later in the
thing. Yeah,
game, yeah, I think Ben did a good job in the second quarter because um, he managed to persuade everybody that the refs weren't calling it the right way because of the
mm,
numbers on the scoreboard. And
mm,
yeah, I looked back at that and I watched Newcastle not contest a shot for a quarter.
mm.
So the Cheshire, I think, were more worried about calls that they were being called for at the far end
Yeah, yeah.
than the ones that they weren't getting at this end because they're 20, you can't complain about not getting a call when you've got 29 points or 54 points on the board at half time. I
Mm.
thought, I mean, it must be a hellish game of ref, something like that. You're
Yeah,
going up,
yeah, yeah.
down, absolutely hellish game of ref. I thought they got a little bit ticky-tacky in relation to transition stuff. I thought James was very unlucky. He probably got three fouls in transition. Maybe one of them might have been. But more than anything, it just kind of just continued on. It was almost like a boxing match,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and who was gonna kind of fight the last blow? What really hurt Newcastle more than anything else, more than the stupidity of James's technical fouling out, more than not playing the level of appropriate defense at times, was losing Pulliam. That
Yeah,
absolutely killed them, I
yeah.
thought.
And then compounded to that, Okoro fouling out with 2.5
Well, that
minutes
was it, and that was
to
kind
go.
of the finals, the straw on, because that then leaves them with basically with Knight having to run the point. Spencer came in, but he showed no inclination to get on the ball.
Mm.
And so that left with Knight running the point, which ends up in the situation that we end up at the end of the game. So let's get to the end of the game
Let's
because
get to the end of the game.
I
So,
really didn't overly enjoy it. I'm sorry,
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
miserable. I wasn't there. It was just bang, 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 bang,
It
bang, bang,
was
bang.
really enjoyable when you sat there in the front row, mate. I'll
Yeah,
tell
I'm
you that.
sure it was. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Okoro fouls out 2.5 minutes to go. From the ensuing free throws, it's
Probably
90.
that foul as well. This is
Mm,
part of it was pushing it back on Timberlake.
mm,
A silly foul, not a foul where you're trying to make a play, just a foul, just an instinctive kind of pushing it back under
mm.
the basket.
Yeah,
And both teams, I think both teams have issues with fouling. To be honest, I
yeah,
think both foul too much. And it's not the hard, it's not the proper fouls. It's those ones. They really hurt you. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So 96-98, 2 minutes to go. Alan Ikens to the rim. 1:28 to go. Knight dribbling the ball,
Yeah,
loses
you
the
tell
ball.
me about this call.
Yeah, yeah. I've got the answer now. Dive back for the loose ball, committed a foul. Now, in real time, I was like, oh, Cheshire haven't got the ball, so there we go. And then I was like, how is that actually not a shooting foul? Because nobody's got possession of the ball, so therefore it's not an offensive foul. Fortunately, one of our esteemed referees who wasn't doing this game was doing a different game yesterday.
Right.
Obviously, watch back the last 2 minutes because overnight I got a message explaining as to why it wasn't a
Right.
shooting
Well, no, I'm
foul.
interested in this.
So basically, Knight hasn't, even though Knight's lost the ball, Cheshire haven't gained control of the ball, so therefore the offensive possession hasn't changed. In a
So
in
does
a
that so in the
on a
same way?
shot on a shot, it changes. It ceases. Your possession ceases at the point you release the ball.
So on a pass, so if there's a pass and a player goes to intercept it, the
Yeah.
ball isn't anybody's at the point, and the offensive player doesn't, and the offensive player nudges the defensive player who's going to intercept, that would also be a team control foul because
Yes.
you have the ball,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
the ball was
Yeah. Yeah.
technically loose.
So my sort of reading
Okay.
of it, and I didn't go back and confirm that, is it's the same sort of thing as the shot clock. So in that
Yeah.
situation where they both dive on the floor, if there's no foul committed and it was tapped out and Newcastle picked the ball back up, the shot clock wouldn't have reset, and
Yeah.
therefore it's still the
So
same offense.
on a loose ball, there
Yeah.
is no change. There has to be a formal change of possession.
Somebody has to get control of the ball for the possession to change, which is
Yeah,
why it's a
and it's
sideline
not
ball
for
and
the,
not
and it's not
choice.
for the refs to infer when there is no
He would have
control.
got there first, so therefore it's yeah,
They're
yeah,
not to do that. It has to be the player.
yeah.
Um, oh,
And
good
and
job.
I think he got one hand on it, but he hadn't gained control of the ball.
Control. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, good job, guys.
Yes, so thank you very much to our friend, who I know listens, but I won't name him.
Oh, they all do.
Uh,
They all
uh,
do.
yeah,
They're all crap, and they all listen.
yeah.
Uh,
They're all
oh,
really good, Dave, and we appreciate. No, to be honest with you, I wasn't sure what it was, so somebody telling me why it was is
absolutely,
I'm
yeah. I'm,
more
I'm
than
I'm right
willing
because
to
I was
laugh.
on your side until you just told me that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm right.
I'd rather know and get it right next time than not know.
Absolutely. And it's
Um,
great, isn't it great though, after 30 years, right? And after I've been 30 years, we're still seeing stuff in games that,
yeah.
quite
What was
low.
that?
What was that? What a sport.
Yeah, yeah,
Literally, there's always something
yeah,
that kind of just shows up, which is like, did that happen? What happens
yeah,
there? What does that
yeah,
mean? Can you do that?
yeah,
I mean, there was one in one of the games I saw this week, and I can't remember which game it was, where the shot clock didn't start on it was a Leicester game. The shot clock didn't start on an inbounds from the baseline,
yeah.
and the refs, maybe the clock did start and the shot clock didn't, and the refs were going to reset play at the sideline, but then went back to the
No, that
baseline
was
for
the Cheshire game. That was the Cheshire game. That was the
Was
Cheshire
it?
game because I went, why is it a sideline ball? If the clock's not started, it should go back to the end. And then it
And
did go back to the end.
my question then was, oh, is he allowed to run the baseline?
Yes, of course he is. Yeah, because it's a made score.
But it's a mate, but what's happened in between where the refs have put his
That
hand
didn't
up and
happen.
go,
The clock didn't tip, so none of it
right?
happened.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
I
yeah,
I think you're right. But
yeah,
I was
yeah,
asking, I was thinking to myself, can you do that? What's happened
yeah,
there?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so this sport is great.
yeah. So it was an offensive foul. It's not shots. It was a timeout, and then Scott Grayson misses towards going to the basket. Knight is then fouled with 50.4 seconds to go. He goes 1 for 2. It's
Yeah.
96-101 to Newcastle. And then the key bit of the game, really. Timberlake makes a three with 43.1 seconds to go. On the inbound, he then steals the ball from Knight and ties the score. So in 3 seconds, he scored 5 points. 101, 101.
Yeah, and more than that, obviously at this point, Newcastle are so night dependent because he's the only
Mm,
ball handler left on the court, and he hasn't
mm,
actually been ball handling in the whole game.
mm,
So he turns the ball over at 1:30 when he commits that foul. Then he gets the and one, or gets the foul play, and then they come down and Timberlake gets a shot off one pass from the corner,
mm,
one pass on the kind of coming up on the up screen, and it absolutely just mind-boggling to me that off a simple, it might not even have been a down screen, off a simple kind of run up to catch it, he's open
mm,
to turn and look and shoot the ball.
mm,
I mean, it is just bad defense. I know it's a great shot. Yeah, he made the shot, but he's been making those shots all night. Everybody's
mm,
been making those shots all night. That is bad defense. You've got to be top locking him, which basically means you stand on top of him, make him go the other side so he can't come up, or you've got to be right there on it. And I thought it was indicative of the kind of the manner in which the game was played. Oh, made a good shot. Okay, fine, get on with it. We'll make one at the other end. Problem was he was the most alive player on the court because again, Newcastle don't have a point guard, the inbound support, and Knight isn't in his natural customary position. If you remember the game at Leicester, they played in the trophy semi-final
mm.
where it all went horrendously
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
When they
yeah,
didn't, that's why they brought Pulliam in, undoubtedly,
yeah, yeah,
to be able to finish off games.
yeah.
He's sitting on the sideline with his finger in a bandage. Um, and Timberlake is just too quick, and Knight is probably tired, having played the whole game, having made some unbelievable plays, having dropped 37 points, and now he's put in a situation where I want Spencer to get the ball, but Spencer's not getting the ball.
Mm.
So Timberlake makes a great play, turns it over. Mark probably wishes he'd burned his last time out, but that's one of those things. And then it's a kind of a two-possession game, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So the Timberlake went for another steal. This time he committed a foul. Knight went to the line, made them both 101, 103 with 38.7 seconds to go. 26 seconds to go. Timberlake fouled by Delpesh. Makes both free throws, levels the score at 103. There's 26.2 seconds
Yeah,
remaining
you're
at
right.
that point. Knight dribbled. Knight dribbles the ball and keeps dribbling. He's looking at the clock all the way, and
Yeah.
then goes too late and gets a 23.8 second violation.
Yeah. Replay,
Yeah,
replay. Just,
just ask me. I was sat there. I knew it was 2.2.
yeah, well, but yeah, replay.
Uh,
I mean, to be fair, it's not even replay. That ref should know that. Ref should know what's on the clock before that possession starts.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not a hard call. That I didn't spot it myself, but that's not a hard call. Didn't make a difference because he got it off at point four, didn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah. So the
So
referees, for anybody who didn't see it, there should have been 2.2 on the clock. The referees put 2.4 on the clock. Cheshire timeout, advanced the ball. Timberlake banks in a three to win it, and as you say, it was inside 2.2 as well as 2.4. So
but you look at that play though. Even that play. Firstly, it's exactly what they ran to. I think it's exactly what they ran to get the three for Timberlake at Cheshire when they were down 7 after Barnes tried to call that timeout.
mm.
Same.
Caledonia.
Caledonia, sorry, yeah, after Barnes tried to call that timeout. So Newcastle should have been aware of it. Secondly, Timberlake's the one guy who can't catch the ball,
Mm,
right? At that point, if you're in Newcastle, he did. Thirdly, um, I'm not quite sure what Spencer was doing because Spencer chased him off the screen, but basically ran straight past him, took himself right out of the play. Um, Now that's good defense if he's got 1 second to shoot it,
Yeah,
but not if
yeah.
he's got 2.5, right? So Spencer runs straight out of the play. And Ward Hibbert actually plays fantastic help defense to get there to challenge. And Timberlake, to be fair, gets lucky, but
Mm.
he gets because he wasn't trying to bank it in. But he goes up there, he makes a shot to win the game. There's
He
no,
gets lucky because he's 6 or 7 for 3,
oh yeah,
and
he
now
made
he's
look,
seven, and then now he's 7 of 8. That's the shot when you've made all those threes in a game; those go in.
more than that, Dan. It's the fact that when you've made all those plays in the last minute,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, and you are the guy,
yeah.
So that it's like, you just guard him, we don't let him
Mm.
touch the ball. Somebody else is going to beat us. They didn't do that. And as I said, defensively, it was, as what Spencer was doing was he made Timberlake's decision for him.
Mm.
You just got to be down there, stay on him, and challenge, but not you can't be flying past like that. But it's tough. I mean, in the day, I mean, yeah, from an offensive perspective, it was a wonderful game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But from my perspective, it took 38 minutes before Newcastle challenged Larry Austin to shoot a corner three,
Mm.
right? You've got a play where near the end where Scott Grayson, if you remember, got the dunk on Austin's layup miss.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That comes because Ward Hibbert is overplaying Austin 25 feet from the basket and Austin back cuts him. Where you want Austin to have the ball
mm.
25 feet from the basket.
Mm.
You're not going to give him a back cut to get to the rim.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The whole I thought the whole you can't turn around and say, "Oh, we are a defensive team. You're going to give up 106 in any game." Now, to be fair, Cheshire they don't turn around and say they're a defensive team.
mm. Mm.
They're not. They're going to come in and they're going to come in, particularly in that gym. They're going to come and blow you away. But even in Caledonia, they're 90 plus. That's
Yeah,
the way they are. That's fine. Okay. But Newcastle and Newcastle ultimately ran out of bodies because if they hadn't run out of bodies, they would probably won that game 110, 106.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's basketball. If you
Mm.
if you're in somebody else's gym, and particularly that gym this season,
Yeah, yeah,
get yourself involved in the scoring race. Don't complain when strange things happen at the end.
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
and to say strange things, it was Nick Timberlake going off.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
credit to him.
yeah, yeah. 7 of 8 threes, 37
I prefer
points.
to talk about breaking the rules.
Yeah. He was 11 of 19 overall. He had 5 rebounds and 4 assists. And you predicted it 2 weeks ago, Dave. So don't be
Yeah.
don't be mad when he does it against your team.
Yeah. Well,
Austin 17 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists. Scott Grayson 17.6 rebounds. They were 53% field goal shooting, 14 of 25 from three. Knight, 37.7 rebounds. Okoro, 27 points. Pulliam, 11. They were 50% field goals, 13 of 26 for three. I meant to look up the last time there was 27 three
4%
pointers
three-point shooting across the team.
over 50% shooting as well from both teams.
Yeah, well, as I say, you know my reaction to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bad defense.
yeah. So don't buy a season ticket. Don't buy a season ticket EPSV because that's what we
No,
love.
no, no. I'm sure. Look, from an SBL or SLB perspective, from a BBL
Yeah,
perspective, right? It's perfect. It's
yeah, yeah.
fast, furious. It's flying around. It's
Great
100,
highlight at the end. Yeah,
Great
yeah,
highlight at
yeah,
the end. Home team wins. Everybody jumps around. It
yeah,
doesn't get.
yeah,
I get that,
yeah,
and I'm not suggesting in any way I am the mainstream.
yeah.
So so don't change me.
Let's run through the table then. London Lions back on top, 10 and 4. Leicester and Sheffield both 9 and 4. Cheshire 7 and 5. Newcastle 6 and 6. Manchester 4 and 7. Surrey 4 and 8. Bristol 3 and 5. I say it every week. They've got so many games to play. And Caledonia 2 and 11. And what we've learnt is road wins are tough, Dave. There's only one team over 500. That is London, who are 4 and 3, and they should be 3 and 4.
Oh, yeah,
If there was
yeah,
a travel called or a
yeah, yeah.
closeout,
Sure.
they should be 3 and 4.
I think they are
Nobody
certainly
above
when
five.
we're dealing with, nowadays, there's going to be a lot of 2 game weekends,
Mm,
a lot of back-to-back weekends for
yeah,
teams now.
yeah,
You've
yeah,
still got 20 plus games to play in the
Mm,
32 games in this league. Bristol got 24 games to play by the end after the cup final on the trophy final on Saturday, end of January. That's
mm,
24 games in about, January, February, March, and a bit of April. So that's 24 games in about 12 weeks.
mm.
That's 2 games a week. That's,
Yeah.
health is going to be absolutely critical,
Mm,
to teams going forward. Health and maybe whatever changes you can make to the rules in the meantime to allow it not to be critical. But there's going to be a ton of games, and when there's a ton of games, it's very difficult for teams. Your last game is not then a precursor to your performance. It's not kind
mm,
of indicative of your performance. You saw that even my football team, Newcastle, last week.
mm,
They blown teams away 9 games in a row, but eventually you run into the wall, and the wall
mm,
with Bournemouth destroyed them. It's going to be the same. It's going to be actually exacerbated in
mm,
this league because it's so much about how coaches manage their depth, who is healthy, and who has the right mentality. Um, and yeah, I don't know who's going to win. I don't know. I
It
still
must be
like I
nice to run into the wall rather than just be the wall, though, Dave. That's that's the
Gladiators. Hey,
alternative to it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
So that brings us to an end. It is trophy final next week. Well, we'll talk off air, Dave, as to whether we can wangle a Sunday night out of
I'm
it.
afraid you might struggle, Dan.
Why is that?
I'm flying to Philadelphia during the
Oh,
game.
yeah, you did tell me this. Yeah, you're
What a
going to
disaster that is.
Philadelphia. Yeah, yeah.
Um, the so I don't know what time I'll have to turn my notification. I'm going to try and watch it on the plane. So if I watch it on the plane, then I've got a chance.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get there about 4 o'clock their time, it's about 9 o'clock our time. So it might have to be Monday for you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
So we'll work
It'll
out
come to
time
me.
zones and everything offline, but we will do a trophy final special next week and break it all down. See whether it's Bristol or Newcastle celebrating the first trophy of the year. But for now, we're gonna say goodbye and keep the rules the same for Dave. Nobody change your rule this week. We haven't got time
It's
next
better.
week. See
Yeah,
you
I know.
later.